The Alpha King's mute daughter spoke her first word, pointing at the Omega and whispering, "Mommy." Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character, Emma. Emma had always felt like she didn't belong. She had never been a part of the world she was born into. The pack of wolves she was surrounded by always looked down on her, calling her weak, insignificant, a burden. The other Omegas in the pack were praised for their ability to shift, to connect with the earth and the pack, but Emma couldn't. Her wolf had never awakened, and because of that, she was often pushed to the side, ignored by those who mattered most. Despite this, Emma was kind-hearted. She was often seen helping the younger pups, taking care of the sick, and doing whatever she could to make herself useful. But no one saw her, not really. She was invisible to them. She had no worth. That's what she believed anyway. One evening, Emma was in the woods, tending to a small wound on her hand after helping a pup who had fallen. She sat under the dim moonlight, her mind heavy with thoughts of loneliness and rejection. As she bandaged the wound, a soft sound from the bushes caught her attention. She froze, her heart pounding in her chest. A rustling sound grew louder, and out of the shadows emerged the form of a small girl. The girl was unlike any child Emma had ever seen. Her clothes were simple but elegant, and her eyes were wide with innocence. But what made Emma's heart skip a beat was the girl's silence. She didn't speak, didn't make a sound. Emma knelt down, slowly, not wanting to startle the girl. "Are you lost, little one?" Emma whispered, her voice soft and gentle. The child blinked, her gaze fixated on Emma. Then, out of nowhere, the girl lifted her hand, pointing at Emma, and whispered, "Mommy." Emma's heart stopped. The girl's voice, though soft, had a depth to it, as though the words had been waiting to be spoken for a long time. Emma couldn't comprehend what was happening. She had never seen this child before, and yet, she felt an overwhelming sense of connection. Before she could process it further, a figure appeared from behind the trees, tall, imposing, with eyes that glowed like molten silver. Alpha King William. He stepped forward, his presence commanding, and immediately, Emma knew he was no ordinary man. He was the ruler of the pack, the Alpha King, feared by all. "You've met my daughter," he said, his voice low and controlled, but there was something in his eyes that softened as he looked at Emma. Her first word, after all these years, was "Mommy." "You are her mother." Emma was too stunned to speak, her mind racing to understand what was happening. She had just been chosen by the Alpha King's mute daughter, and for reasons she couldn't yet grasp, she was now bound to this powerful man and his family in a way she could never have imagined. Emma stood up, her legs trembling, not sure what to say or do. But the moment the Alpha King took a step closer, everything shifted. He didn't look at her with the cold indifference most of the pack had. Instead, his gaze held something far more intense. Recognition, perhaps, or the beginning of something more. "You don't need to speak," he said, his voice gentle yet firm. "My daughter has chosen you, and that is more than enough for me." And just like that, Emma's life changed forever. She was no longer the invisible Omega, no longer the one left behind. She was now something more, something she had never dared hope to be. Emma stood in stunned silence as Alpha King William's gaze never wavered. His powerful presence loomed over her, and yet, there was a gentleness in his eyes that she had never seen before in someone of his stature. The moment Daisy had whispered, "Mommy," everything about Emma's life had shifted. She had been chosen, not by any grand gesture or ceremony, but by a small, fragile child who had lived in silence for so long. Emma felt an overwhelming surge of emotions, a mixture of fear, wonder, and something she couldn't quite name. Her heart pounded in her chest as she tried to find her voice, unsure of what to say or how to react. "Your daughter chose me?" Emma's voice was barely above a whisper, her disbelief evident. William nodded slowly, his gaze softening as he looked at Daisy, who was still standing next to him, her small hand reaching out toward Emma. "She has never spoken a word before," William said quietly, his voice tinged with something Emma couldn't quite place. "Not until she saw you. She has always been quiet, but now, she calls you mommy. That has to mean something. Emma took a hesitant step forward, her breath catching in her throat. She had never imagined that anything, let alone a child, could change her fate so suddenly. She had always felt invisible, an omega with no power or purpose. But now, in the presence of the Alpha King and his daughter, she felt as if the world was shifting beneath her feet. Daisy's eyes, wide and filled with innocence, locked onto Emma's, and for a moment, the entire world seemed to fade away. It was just the two of them, and Emma felt a strange, unexplainable pull toward the little girl. It was as if Daisy's quiet presence had unlocked something deep within her, something she had buried for so long. She knelt down slowly, meeting Daisy's gaze, and reached out with trembling hands. "I'm here, sweet girl," Emma said softly, her voice shaking. Daisy's small hand touched Emma's cheek, and for the first time, Emma felt as though she truly mattered. She felt needed. And in that moment, something inside her shifted. William watched silently, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. But there was a flicker of something in his eyes, a recognition, perhaps, of what was happening between Emma and Daisy. He stepped forward, his presence undeniable, and placed a hand gently on Emma's shoulder. "She has chosen you, Emma," he said, his voice steady but filled with an unspoken understanding. "And now, so have I." Emma looked up at him, her eyes wide with confusion. "You choose me?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. William's gaze softened, his hand still resting on her shoulder. "Yes," he replied simply. "I see what Daisy sees in you. She has never spoken to anyone like this. There's something about you, Emma, something that makes her trust you. And in turn, I trust her judgment." Emma felt a warmth spread through her chest, something she hadn't felt in years. The weight of being an omega, of always being the one left behind, had lifted just a little. She wasn't invisible anymore. "I don't understand," she murmured, her voice full of uncertainty. "Why me? I'm just me." William smiled gently, his eyes filled with a quiet intensity. "You are exactly who she needs. And perhaps, who I need as well." The words hung in the air between them, a promise and a challenge all at once. Emma didn't know what this meant for her future, but in that moment, she knew one thing for certain. Her life had changed forever. She wasn't the weak, invisible omega anymore. She was something more, something real. And for the first time, she felt as though she was exactly where she was meant to be. Emma woke up the next morning with the soft light of dawn filtering through the trees. The world outside the small cottage was quiet, peaceful, almost unreal. She had never felt so alive, so at peace. It had only been a day since she had met the Alpha King and his daughter, and yet, everything had changed. She wasn't sure how it had happened, but somehow, she had found herself at the heart of something bigger than herself. She wasn't the omega who had been rejected anymore. She wasn't invisible. She had purpose now, and it terrified her. As she stood up and walked to the window, Emma couldn't help but feel a little lost. She was in a strange place, surrounded by unfamiliar faces, with a future that seemed impossible to imagine. But then she remembered Daisy's gentle touch, her first word whispered in the silence. "Mommy." Emma's heart fluttered in her chest at the thought. She had never known the meaning of that word, not like this. Daisy, the mute child of the Alpha King, had chosen her. And now, she was bound to them. Bound to this powerful man who had once seemed so distant, so unreachable. William Thornridge, the Alpha King, was someone she had never imagined could care for someone like her. But his words last night had been clear. "I see what Daisy sees in you." It felt impossible to understand, but Emma couldn't deny the pull she felt toward them. Towards Daisy, towards William. She felt a warmth in her chest when she thought of them, something more than just duty. A connection, maybe. She had spent her life feeling like an outsider, like she didn't belong anywhere. But now, in the quiet of this strange place, she was starting to feel like she was exactly where she was meant to be. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. Emma turned, her heart skipping a beat as she walked over to open it. Standing there, looking as commanding and powerful as ever, was Alpha King William. He stood tall, his posture perfect, his silver-gray eyes fixed on her with an intensity that took her breath away. "Good morning," he said, his voice low and steady. "How did you sleep?" Emma swallowed hard, suddenly feeling nervous under his gaze. I slept well," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. William's lips curled into a small, almost imperceptible smile. Good, he said. I thought we could take a walk, get some fresh air. You and Daisy can spend some time together. Emma hesitated for a moment, but then nodded. She didn't know what she expected from this walk, but she knew it was something she couldn't turn down. She had already stepped into this world of power and mystery, and there was no going back now. She had to understand it, understand them. As she walked outside and into the crisp morning air, Emma felt a little more at ease. Daisy was playing nearby, picking flowers and looking at the world around her with curiosity. She was a quiet, gentle child, but there was something in her eyes that spoke volumes. She had seen something in Emma, something that had made her trust her, and that trust felt like a gift. She's been asking about you, William said, his voice soft as he walked beside her. She doesn't speak much, but when she does, it's always meaningful. You're the first person she's ever called mommy. Emma felt her heart swell at his words. She had never thought of herself as a mother, but somehow, Daisy had made her feel like one. I don't know what I did to deserve that, Emma said quietly, but I'm honored. William glanced at her, his eyes reflecting something unreadable. Daisy is special. She sees things others don't. She saw something in you that made her choose you, and I believe in her judgment. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Emma didn't know what to say to that. She wasn't sure if she believed she was worthy of such trust, such a bond. But as she looked down at Daisy, picking flowers and giggling softly, she couldn't help but feel something shift inside her. Maybe she was worthy. Maybe she had more to offer than she had ever realized. What happens now? Emma asked, her voice uncertain. William paused, turning to face her fully. Now, we take it one step at a time, he said. I won't rush you, Emma, but I want you to know that you're not alone in this. We'll face everything together. His words were simple, but there was a sincerity in them that made Emma feel more at ease than she had in a long time. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in years, she felt like she had a place, a purpose, and maybe, just maybe, a family. As the days passed, Emma settled into the rhythm of life at the Alpha King's estate. The initial shock of being chosen, of having Daisy call her mommy, still lingered, but Emma found herself growing more comfortable in this strange new world. William had kept his word, allowing Emma and Daisy the space they needed to bond, but the weight of her new reality was never far from her mind. It wasn't just Daisy's quiet presence that had drawn Emma in, but William's quiet strength, the way he seemed to see through her insecurities and fears without saying a word. One evening, as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the grounds, William invited Emma to join him for a walk. It had become a quiet tradition between them, these evening walks, where the world felt still and the weight of the day seemed to lift. Tonight, the air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and earth. The sky was painted with soft hues of orange and pink, the colors of a fading day. Emma walked beside William, her steps slow, her mind wandering. Daisy was back at the house, playing with the other children in the pack. Emma's heart swelled every time she thought of the little girl who had so effortlessly claimed her as mother. You seem distant tonight, William said, breaking the silence between them. His voice was gentle, yet there was an intensity behind it that Emma couldn't ignore. She glanced up at him, surprised by his perceptiveness. I'm just thinking, she replied, offering him a small smile. About everything. About this place. About us. William nodded, his eyes fixed ahead. I understand. Change is never easy. But I want you to know that you don't have to carry the weight of it alone. Emma looked at him, studying his profile in the fading light. He was a man of power, of command, yet there was a tenderness in his words that made her feel safe. I never expected this, she said quietly. This connection with Daisy. And with you. I've never felt like I belonged anywhere before, William. He stopped walking, turning to face her fully. You belong here, Emma. With me. With Daisy. With this family. You are exactly where you're meant to be. His words were simple, but they held a truth that resonated deep within her. For the first time in her life, Emma felt like she truly belonged. She wasn't the broken Omega anymore. She wasn't the outcast. She was part of something bigger, something beautiful. William reached out, gently taking her hand in his. The touch was warm, comforting, and Emma's heart skipped a beat at the unexpected intimacy. She looked down at their joined hands. unsure of what to say, but feeling a warmth spreading through her chest. "I didn't know what to expect when I came here," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I'm starting to think that maybe I've found my place." William smiled, a rare softness in his expression. "You have. And I'm not going anywhere, Emma. I'll be here for you, just as you'll be here for us." For a moment, the world around them seemed to fade away. It was just the two of them, standing together in the quiet of the evening, with the weight of the past behind them and the promise of the future ahead. Emma squeezed his hand, feeling a surge of emotion well up inside her. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid. She had found a home, a family, and maybe, just maybe, she had found love. As they continued their walk, the sound of their footsteps was the only thing that could be heard. It was a quiet, peaceful moment, and in that peace, Emma knew one thing for certain. She was where she was meant to be. Days passed in a quiet blur for Emma. The initial excitement of her new life had settled into a comforting routine. She woke up each morning to the sound of birds outside, the soft rustling of leaves in the breeze, and the gentle presence of Daisy, who had become a constant in her life. William, too, was there every day, though their conversations remained few, yet meaningful. Emma had never expected to find peace in a world so foreign to her, but in the heart of this family, she found herself growing into someone she never thought she could be. One evening, after a day spent in the garden with Daisy, Emma found herself alone in the study, going through some books she had found on the shelf. As she skimmed through the pages, she realized how much she had missed the comfort of reading, something she had neglected over the years. It was in the midst of this quiet solitude that William entered the room, his footsteps soft on the stone floor. "I didn't mean to disturb you," he said, his voice low, as though sensing her peaceful moment. Emma looked up, a soft smile crossing her face. "You didn't disturb me. I was just catching up on a few things." William nodded, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. "I've been thinking," he began, taking a step closer to her. "About everything. About how much has changed in such a short time." Emma closed the book in her hands and set it down on the table, her attention fully on him. "I know. It's been overwhelming." William walked over to the window and looked out at the fading light of the evening sky. "I know this wasn't easy for you. I don't want to rush you into anything. But I can't deny the connection I feel, Emma. And I believe Daisy feels it too. You are not just some guest in our lives." Emma stood and walked over to where he stood, looking out at the distant horizon. His words hit her deeply. She had never been someone's first choice, never been chosen before. And now, to hear him speak so openly about his feelings, it made her heart flutter in ways she wasn't prepared for. "I'm not sure what to say," she whispered, her voice a little unsteady. "I've never had a family. I never thought I would." William turned to face her, his eyes soft, yet filled with intensity. "You're part of our family now. You don't have to feel like you need to say anything. Just be with us. You've already given us more than you realize." Emma felt the weight of his words, and it was as though a quiet understanding passed between them. She wasn't just a caretaker for Daisy anymore, nor just the Omega who had been chosen out of necessity. She was someone important. She was family. "I've never had this before," Emma said quietly, almost to herself. "I've never felt like I belonged anywhere." William reached out, gently taking her hand in his. "You belong here, Emma. You belong with Daisy and with me." Her heart pounded as she looked at him, at the sincerity in his eyes. She had never known someone could make her feel so seen, so valued. It wasn't just Daisy who had chosen her. William, the Alpha King, had too. And that was something she never expected. As they stood there, hand in hand, the air between them thick with unspoken emotions, Emma realized that she had a future here, a future she hadn't dared to dream of until now. The days of being invisible, of feeling like she was nothing more than an outcast, were over. She had found her place in this world, and it was with them. And with that thought, Emma finally allowed herself to relax, to embrace the life she had been given. For the first time, she felt a sense of belonging. And it was beautiful. Emma had found herself in a world she never expected to belong to. And yet, every day spent with William and Daisy made it clearer that this was where she was meant to be. As the days turned into weeks, the quiet routine she had built for herself started to feel more like home. She spent her mornings helping Daisy, her afternoons with William, and her evenings alone with her thoughts. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and for the first time, Emma didn't feel invisible. One morning, as she sat at the table, a small plate of breakfast before her, Daisy came rushing into the room, her face glowing with excitement. "Mommy, look," Daisy said, pointing eagerly at something in her hands. Emma looked up, smiling at the sound of Daisy's voice. It was still rare for Daisy to speak, but every word she uttered felt like a gift. Emma stood up and walked over to her, kneeling down to meet the little girl at eye level. "What is it, sweetie?" she asked gently. Daisy opened her hands to reveal a small bouquet of wildflowers she had picked from the garden. Emma's heart warmed at the sight. "They're for you, Mommy," Daisy said, her voice soft but clear. Emma's eyes welled up with tears at the simple, yet profound gesture. "Thank you, Daisy," Emma whispered, her voice thick with emotion. She took the flowers from Daisy and smelled them, feeling a surge of love for the child who had chosen her, who had brought so much light into her life. As she straightened up, William entered the room, his usual confident stride more measured today, as though he had something on his mind. "Good morning," he said, his eyes softening as he looked at the scene before him. "I see we have flowers." Emma smiled and nodded. "Yes, Daisy picked them for me." William's eyes softened further, and he gave a slight nod. "She's been doing that a lot lately. Picking flowers, I mean. I think it's her way of showing her affection." Emma met his gaze, and for a moment, the world outside the room seemed to fade away. In his eyes, she saw something she hadn't fully understood until now. Something deep, something real. He cared for her, and in return, she cared for him. Not just as the Alpha King, but as the man who had shown her a love she never expected. "She's very special," Emma said quietly, her voice full of emotion. William stepped closer, standing next to her. "You both are," he replied, his voice low but sincere. "I never expected this, you know. I never expected to find someone like you." Emma turned to look at him, her heart racing. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. William's gaze was steady as he looked at her. "I mean that. I never thought I'd find someone who could care for Daisy the way you do. And I certainly didn't think I'd find someone who could bring so much warmth into my life." Emma's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't realized how much she had longed for this kind of connection, this kind of love. She had spent so much of her life feeling alone, and now, here she was, with a family. "I didn't know I could care like this," she said softly, her voice full of wonder. William reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You've always had it in you, Emma. You just needed to see it for yourself." Emma looked down at the flowers in her hands, the simple bouquet that Daisy had given her. It was a symbol of the love and acceptance she had found here, in this quiet corner of the world. She didn't need anything grand to know that she was exactly where she was meant to be. With Daisy, with William, with the family she had never dreamed of but now couldn't imagine living without. "I'm starting to believe that," she said, her voice filled with quiet certainty. William smiled, his eyes filled with affection. "I'm glad." And for the first time in her life, Emma felt like she truly belonged. Not just as an Omega, but as a mother, a partner, and someone who was loved for exactly who she was. The days blended together in a peaceful routine, but Emma couldn't help but feel a deep, quiet shift inside her. She had come to accept her place in this family, but it was hard to shake the feeling that something more awaited her, something beyond the comfortable walls of the cottage. William had been patient, kind, and understanding, giving her space when she needed it, but always there when she needed reassurance. He was unlike anyone she had ever met. As for Daisy, the bond between them had only grown stronger. Every day, the little girl seemed to trust her more, and each new word she spoke filled Emma's heart with pride. It was a bond Emma had never expected but desperately needed. It was one afternoon, as the sun was starting to dip below the horizon, casting a warm glow across the garden, that Emma felt it. A subtle shift in the air, a feeling of anticipation, like the calm before a storm. She was sitting by the window, watching Daisy play in the garden, when William entered the room, his face more serious than usual. "Emma," he said softly, his voice carrying a weight she hadn't heard before. "There's something we need to talk about." Emma looked up at him, a slight flutter of anxiety rising in her chest. She had gotten used to his presence, his calm demeanor, and she had come to trust him. But there was something in his tone now that unsettled her. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice steady despite the unease building inside her. William sighed, walking over to her, his eyes filled with a mixture of determination and concern. "It's about the pack," he began. "Things are changing. There are forces at work that I've kept from you for a while, things you need to know." Emma's heart skipped a beat. The pack, the world she had so carefully stepped into, was never just a quiet backdrop. She had known that. "What kind of forces?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. William paused, then knelt down beside her, meeting her gaze. "There are factions within the pack, those who don't agree with the way I've been ruling. And there are some who see Daisy, as a threat to their power." Emma felt her breath catch. She had never thought about what her presence in the pack might mean beyond the walls of their home. She had always believed in William, in his leadership, but now, for the first time, doubt crept into her mind. "What does this mean for us?" she asked, her voice small, vulnerable. William reached out, taking her hand in his, offering her the strength he always seemed to carry so effortlessly. "It means," he began, his voice steady, "that we may have to leave. There are those who will stop at nothing to tear us apart, Emma. But I will not let them harm you. I will protect you, Daisy, and our future, no matter what it takes." Emma felt a lump form in her throat. She had never been in a situation like this before. She had never been part of something so much bigger than herself. The idea of leaving, of being forced to run, terrified her, but the look in William's eyes, the fire in his gaze, gave her the courage she needed to speak her truth. "I'm not afraid," she said quietly, squeezing his hand. "I'll go wherever you go, as long as we're together. That's all that matters." William's eyes softened, and for a moment, the weight of the world seemed to lift from his shoulders. He pulled her into his embrace, holding her tightly. "I'm glad you're with me, Emma. I couldn't do this without you." Emma wrapped her arms around him, feeling a sense of calm wash over her. In that moment, she knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. As long as they had each other, nothing else mattered. They stood there for a long moment, embracing, the quiet sound of the wind rustling through the trees outside the only sound that filled the room. Emma knew that their lives were changing once again, but she was no longer afraid. She had found her place in this world, and with William and Daisy by her side, she was ready to face whatever came next. The following days were filled with preparations. Emma and William had decided that the only option was to leave the pack's home and seek safety elsewhere. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was the only one that made sense given the circumstances. The news of factions within the pack who did not agree with William's leadership had sent a ripple of fear through Emma's heart. She never imagined that her presence, and Daisy's, would stir up so much opposition. Still, there was no turning back now. Emma had learned to trust William, and his conviction in keeping them safe was something she held on to. The decision to leave was not one they made lightly, especially with Daisy, but Emma knew they had no other choice. One evening, after packing their few belongings and preparing to leave, Emma stood by the door of their small cottage, looking out into the woods that had been their sanctuary. The peacefulness of the place, the calm mornings and quiet evenings, had been a balm to her soul. But now, the shadows of uncertainty loomed. William joined her, standing beside her, his presence steady and comforting. "We'll be all right," he said softly, as if sensing her worries. "Wherever we go, as long as we're together, it will be enough." Emma turned to look at him, seeing the quiet strength in his eyes. He had been her protector, her rock, since the moment they had met. And now, as they faced the unknown together, that same strength anchored her. "I believe you," she said, her voice filled with quiet certainty. I wish things were different. I wish we didn't have to leave." William placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, a silent gesture of reassurance. "I know," he said, "but this is the only way. We have to put Daisy's future first." Emma nodded, feeling the weight of their decision settle in her chest. As much as she loved this place, as much as she had come to care for it, her heart belonged to Daisy now. Her priority was keeping Daisy safe, no matter the cost. The night before their departure was filled with quiet conversations and tender goodbyes. Daisy was unaware of the full scope of what was happening, but she could sense the change in the air. She had always been perceptive, and Emma could see the concern in her eyes as she clung to Emma's side. "Don't worry, sweetheart," Emma whispered, brushing a lock of hair away from Daisy's face. We're going to be all right. Daisy's soft gaze met hers, and for a brief moment, Emma saw the same trust in Daisy's eyes that she had once seen in William's. It was a quiet, unspoken bond, one that reminded Emma that no matter what came next, they would face it together. The next morning, they left with the first light of dawn. The woods around the estate seemed different now, as though they too understood the gravity of their departure. Emma felt a strange mix of sadness and relief as they walked away from the life they had known. There were no grand goodbyes, no dramatic farewells. It was simply them, William, Emma, and Daisy, leaving behind the safety of what had become home. Emma had no idea where they were going, or what lay ahead, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid. She had William by her side, and Daisy, the little girl who had chosen her. That was all she needed to face whatever came next. The road ahead was uncertain, but Emma knew that as long as they were together, they would make it through. The journey was long and uncertain, but Emma found herself surprisingly calm as they traveled deeper into unfamiliar territory. William, though silent at times, was a steady presence beside her, and Daisy's gentle hand holding hers gave her a sense of strength she never thought she could possess. The path ahead was unknown, but with each step, Emma felt a quiet determination growing within her. The world around them seemed to change as they moved further from the life they had once known. The lush forests and open fields began to give way to a more rugged landscape, a reminder of how far they had come, and how far they still had to go. Yet, even in the face of uncertainty, Emma was not afraid. She had her family, and that was all that mattered. After days of traveling, they found themselves in a small, quiet village. The people here seemed different, kinder, gentler. It was a far cry from the pack's fortress-like home, where power and dominance had always ruled the day. Emma had expected to feel more out of place here, but instead, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known she was missing. The villagers, though initially wary of strangers, warmed up to them quickly, especially when they saw Daisy's infectious smile and Emma's gentle demeanor. It wasn't long before they found a small cottage on the edge of the village, nestled among the trees. It was modest, but it was theirs. For the first time in what felt like forever, Emma allowed herself to relax. She had a home, a real home, and in this new place, she began to rebuild her life. Days turned into weeks, and Emma grew accustomed to the rhythm of village life. She helped where she could, from tending to the garden to helping with the occasional healing needed by the villagers. William remained by her side, his presence always a quiet strength. He had his moments of introspection, but he was always there when she needed him, when Daisy needed him. There were no more whispers of danger, no more threats from within the pack. For the first time, Emma could breathe easy. But as the seasons changed, so did their circumstances. Emma began to notice a subtle shift in William. It was small at first, a shadow in his eyes, a tension in his shoulders. She had seen the signs of stress before, but this was different. It was like he was carrying a burden that he didn't want her to see. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in shades of gold and pink, Emma sat beside him by the fireplace, watching Daisy play with a small wooden toy. "You've been distant lately," Emma said softly, her voice carrying an undercurrent of concern. William didn't look at her right away, his gaze fixed on the flames. "It's nothing," he muttered, but Emma could hear the strain in his voice. She reached for his hand, gently pulling it into her own. "Tell me," she said, her voice steady but full of care. William finally turned to look at her, his eyes full of something Emma couldn't quite place. "There are things about my past, things I haven't told you." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She had always known there was more to William, more to his story, but she had never pressed him. She had trusted him, just as he had trusted her. "You don't have to tell me if you're not ready," she said softly, but William shook his head. "No, I think it's time. You deserve to know, Emma." He took a deep breath, his expression unreadable. "I was once a man who was defined by his title, his power. The Alpha King. I ruled with strength, but I lost myself in that power. I made choices I regret. I've hurt people I care about." Emma squeezed his hand, her heart aching for him. "William, none of that matters now. You're not that man anymore. You're here with me, with us, and that's all that matters." William smiled faintly, his hand tightening around hers. "I wish I could believe that," he said quietly. "But the truth is, my past will always be a part of me. And as much as I want to move forward, I don't know if I can ever truly leave it behind. Emma took a moment to process his words, her mind racing. She had never asked about his past, never wanted to push him into something he wasn't ready to share. But now, hearing the weight in his voice, she knew that he was still battling with the ghosts of his former life. She leaned in, resting her head against his shoulder. "You don't have to carry it alone," she whispered. "We'll face it together. Whatever comes, we face it as a family." William didn't reply right away, but after a moment, Emma felt his arm wrap around her, pulling her close. "Thank you," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "For everything." Emma closed her eyes, feeling a sense of peace wash over her. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain. They would face it together, as a family. And with that, Emma finally allowed herself to believe that they had a future, one that was worth fighting for.